Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf hasn't made missteps before.
Actor Shia LaBeouf. This guy was arrested outside of Studio 54.
You seem to have gone crazy since the last time I saw you. Is that true?
Does seem that way, doesn't it?
It seems there's a recurring pattern in Hollywood, a cycle almost too familiar to ignore, time and again. Child stars who once captured the world's hearts grow up under the same spotlight that eventually becomes their burden. From Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone, to Lindsay Lohan in Mean Girls, or Miley Cyrus in Hannah Montana, all were childhood icons who stumbled as they crossed into adulthood. And Shia LaBeouf was no exception. He first rose to prominence through Even Stevens, then quickly broke into mainstream cinema with the blockbuster phenomenon of the 2000s, Transformers, as Sam Witwicky, the everyman hero standing alongside the mighty Autobots in their war against the Decepticons. LaBeouf became the face of an era. Those explosive battle sequences, those high-stakes rescues, became cultural landmarks of modern popcorn cinema. In 2008, he joined another Hollywood institution, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Standing beside legend Harrison Ford, he seemed destined to inherit one of the most iconic franchises in movie history. Those moments etched Shia LaBeouf's name into global pop culture memory. But from that same summit, his career's trajectory began to twist a descent marked by turbulence, controversy, and pain. Behind the glare of the spotlight lay a childhood fractured by chaos, the hidden cracks that would one day split wide open. Shia LaBeouf's rise wasn't born from artistic ambition, it came from survival. Growing up in a chaotic hippie household, he faced poverty, violence, and the instability of a father battling PTSD, addiction, and anger. Acting wasn't a dream, it was an escape hatch. Money was the answer to everything happening in my family, he once said, and he meant it. At just 10 years old, Shia was performing stand-up comedy in smoky LA clubs, a kid roasting drunk adults to earn rent money. 2 years later, he cold-called agents pretending to be his own 50-year-old British manager, and it worked. That mix of hustle, pain, and sheer audacity became his brand. Then came Even Stevens, the Disney Channel series that turned him into every kid's favorite troublemaker. His comedic timing was magnetic, his energy impossible to ignore. By 2003, he'd won an Emmy and a fan base that saw him as a natural-born star. But off camera, he was still living in a cheap motel with his father, the same man who once terrified him as a child. Disney paid for the room, but not the healing. That contradiction talent fueled by trauma defined Shia from the start, and as his career exploded beyond the small screen, that same fire would push him higher than anyone imagined, and eventually set everything ablaze. Between 2007 and 2011, Shia LaBeouf became Hollywood's golden boy, the rare child actor who not only survived the transition to adulthood, but conquered it. Disturbia marked his first solo win. But it was Transformers that made him unstoppable, as Sam Witwicky. The everyman caught in an intergalactic war, Shia became the beating heart of a billion-dollar franchise. Explosions, chaos, humor, and right in the middle. This wiry kid from LA grounding the spectacle with raw charisma. By the time Transformers Dark of the Moon hit theaters, it had grossed over $1.1 billion worldwide. He wasn't just a movie star, he was a global product, and Hollywood noticed. In 2008, Steven Spielberg tapped him to join Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, positioning him as the next generation's action hero beside Harrison Ford. The movie made nearly $800 million, and though critics were divided, one thing was clear: Shia LaBeouf had arrived. He could headline blockbusters, charm audiences, and hold his own among legends. By his mid-20s, he had everything the industry promised: fame, fortune, and validation from both audiences and peers. A BAFTA Rising Star Award confirmed it. Directors trusted him. Studios banked on him. To the outside world, Shia was the future of Hollywood. But success came with silence, the kind that echoes when the applause fades. After years of chasing stability through fame, He had reached the summit only to find it hollow. The boy who once acted to escape chaos now found himself trapped in a different kind of cage, one built from attention, pressure, and expectation. And somewhere in that stillness, the first cracks began to form. His first warning signs looked almost ordinary for a young celebrity on the rise: a few arrests, a drunken bar fight, tabloid scuffles. In 2007, he was arrested for trespassing at a Walgreens in Chicago. A year later, a DUI car crash left his hand permanently scarred. In 2011, he was filmed fighting outside a bar. But these incidents weren't just bad behavior, they were symptoms of something deeper. Even then, there was a volatility to LaBeouf that didn't fit the Hollywood template. The industry brushed it off as method. The press called it rebellious. But behind it was a man who didn't seem to know where his performances ended and where he began. That line disintegrated completely in 2013 during rehearsals for Orphans on Broadway. LaBeouf's commitment to method acting spiraled into confrontation. He slept in Central Park to feel his character's loneliness, argued violently with Alec Baldwin, and was eventually fired before opening night. Later, he admitted to following Baldwin home to find closure. It wasn't dedication anymore, it was obsession. His pursuit of authenticity had turned pathological. Then came the plagiarism scandal that shifted him from movie star to art world enigma. In late 2013, LaBeouf released a short film, HowardCanTour.com, only for the internet to quickly uncover that it was lifted almost word for word from a Daniel Clowes comic. The exposure should have ended his career. Instead, he made it worse and stranger. His apologies on Twitter were themselves plagiarized from public figures, including Kanye West and Tiger Woods. It was performance layered over performance, a spiral of irony and provocation. By 2014, he had abandoned Hollywood entirely to reinvent himself as an artist-philosopher. The same year, he appeared on the red carpet for Lars von Trier's Nymphomaniac premiere, wearing a paper bag over his head scrawled with the words, "I am not famous anymore." Cameras flashed, memes exploded. Whatever he was doing, it wasn't movie promotion, it was protest, confession, or both. Shortly after, he launched I Am Sorry, a week-long art installation in a Los Angeles gallery. Visitors entered a small room, one by one, finding LaBeouf seated silently, masked by the same paper bag. They could say or do anything. Some hugged him, some taunted him. Later, he claimed one woman assaulted him during the exhibit, an event that blurred victim and perpetrator, art and trauma, to an almost unbearable degree. It was, perhaps, the purest expression of his psychology control through exposure, punishment through performance. His art projects soon mirrored his unraveling mental state. In Fury 2014, LaBeouf insisted on being cut by his own knife for realism and had a tooth removed by a dentist. For The Tax Collector, he tattooed his entire chest permanently for a supporting role. What looked like commitment to outsiders was, in truth, a desperate search for reality in an industry built on illusion. He was no longer playing characters, he was trying to destroy the distance between them and himself. Outside of film sets, his arrests escalated. In June 2014, he was removed from a Broadway performance of Cabaret for smoking, yelling obscenities, and harassing the cast. He spent the night in jail and later described the experience as a personal rock bottom, but the fall had only begun. In 2015, he was arrested again in Texas for public intoxication, caught on video ranting incoherently to police officers. In 2017, a similar incident in Savannah, Georgia, went viral drunk, angry, shouting racial slurs at officers. The mugshot told the story eyes wide, defiant, lost. It was no longer about fame. It was survival. That same year, he launched He Will Not Divide Dogs US, a live stream protest against the Trump presidency. The project, meant to be a symbol of unity, descended into internet chaos. Alt-right trolls tracked the flag's location using star patterns and plane trails. Stealing it repeatedly, LaBeouf was arrested on site for assault after clashing with a heckler. What began as activism turned into theater, a feedback loop between his pain and the audience's hunger for spectacle. By this point, Shia LaBeouf's life had become indistinguishable from a performance installation part confessional, part breakdown. Every scandal, every apology, every act of rebellion felt curated, yet uncontrolled. He wasn't rebelling against Hollywood anymore. He was rebelling against the very idea of identity. His collapse wasn't sudden, it was cinematic. Act by act. He dismantled the persona the world had built for him, the Disney star, the blockbuster hero, the heir apparent. In its place stood a man desperate to prove he was real, even if it meant self-destruction. Fame had given him everything he thought he wanted, but what it couldn't give stability. Peace. Authenticity became the void he tried to fill with chaos. By 2017, that chaos finally consumed him. The arrests, the humiliation, the addiction, the exhaustion, they converged into one truth. The boy who once turned trauma into fuel had run out of gas, and for the first time in his life, the world stopped watching out of admiration and started watching out of concern. The collapse of Shia LaBeouf wasn't caused by one scandal or one mistake. It was an accumulation of fractures that all stemmed from the same place, unresolved trauma meeting unchecked fame. His downfall wasn't sudden. It was structural. The very qualities that once made him brilliant intensity, authenticity, fearlessness eventually turned corrosive when filtered through ego, addiction, and pain. At the root was a lifelong identity crisis. Acting had always been his survival mechanism, a way to control chaos. But when success stripped away that necessity, he was left without purpose. Hollywood rewarded his volatility, calling it method, calling it genius until it began to implode publicly. What studios saw as dedication was, in reality, a man reenacting his trauma for an audience that mistook it for art. LaBeouf's obsession with being real blurred every boundary. His body became his canvas. His breakdowns became installations. His apologies became performances. In chasing truth, he dismantled the very idea of it turning confession into manipulation, sincerity into spectacle. Honey Boy was his attempt to narrate pain into meaning, but even that act was undermined when he admitted he had fabricated key details. What looked like healing was, perhaps, just another layer of control. And then came the reckoning. The abuse allegations from FKA Twigs reframed his entire narrative. No longer the wounded artist. He became the perpetrator, a man who had repeated the same patterns of harm he once endured. In that mirror, LaBeouf confronted not fame's corruption, but his own. His fall wasn't just a Hollywood tragedy. It was the collapse of a lifelong illusion that pain, when performed beautifully enough, could ever truly set you free. In the end, Shia LaBeouf's story isn't one of victory or defeat. It's a portrait of contradiction. A man whose gift and damage are woven so tightly together that separating them feels impossible. His life reads like a screenplay written by trauma. Itself, Act 1. Survival. Act 2. Chaos. Act 3. The search for grace. Through it all, he has been both the artist and the experiment pushing the limits of pain, truth, and redemption in front of a world that never stops watching. Hollywood has always loved a comeback. But LaBeouf's redemption arc is harder to sell. It doesn't fit the glossy narrative of recovery and forgiveness. His sins are public, his healing private, his talent remains undeniable, yet his reputation carries the weight of what can't be undone. For every peanut butter falcon that reminds audiences of his brilliance, there's the haunting echo of Honey Boy and the question of what was real and what was performance. Perhaps that's what makes his story so distinctly human. Shia LaBeouf embodies the paradox of fame in the 21st century, the idea that exposure is both cure and poison, that art can heal even as it hurts. His rise was meteoric, his fall spectacular, and his survival uncertain, unfinished. Maybe the real question isn't whether he deserves redemption. It's whether redemption is even possible for someone who has lived their entire life as a mirror reflecting not just his own brokenness, but ours.